The story begins in a prison in Russia, where we see a man named Frank Abagnale Jr. Frank is a very clever con man who has committed huge scams. At this time, an FBI agent named Carl had come to take him back to America. Carl was just talking to Frank when suddenly Frank's health started getting very bad. At first, Carl thought this was one of Frank's tricks, but then he realized no one could act that much. He quickly started rushing him to the hospital. But Frank saw the chance and even tried to escape from there. However, the police caught him tightly, after which Frank starts recalling his story from the beginning. Frank was born into a very happy family. His parents loved each other very much. One day Frank's father took him to a shop to buy a suit, but the woman there said the shop was already closed. On this, Frank's father quickly took out a necklace and said, "Isn't this yours?" His trick impressed the woman and she said, "No problem, you can buy the suit." Frank's father was an expert in doing such clever tricks. Then he asked Frank to drive the car like a chauffeur, and soon they reached a bank. After some time, the bank manager came to receive them. Actually, Frank's father had suffered a huge loss in business, so he needed a loan from the bank. Because of another accountant, he had been late in filing his taxes, which caused him heavy losses. But even after explaining all this, no bank was ready to help him. The government seized Frank's father's car, property, and money. Yet even in this crisis, he opened a bank account for Frank. Frank asked him, "Why are you doing this? You are in debt yourself." His father replied, "Don't worry about me. Your whole life is ahead of you. You have to live it well." Suddenly, financial struggles entered their life, and Frank also had to change schools. But on the first day in this new school, a boy started troubling him. He mocked Frank and walked away saying, "You look like a teacher. Dress according to your age." Frank got very angry at this and actually started acting like a teacher. He entered the class and told the real teacher, "What are you doing here? This is my class. I'll teach now, come later." The poor teacher got so troubled that she left. Then Frank insulted that boy in front of everyone. For a whole week, no one realized that a student was teaching the class, until the school found out when Frank was about to take the class on a trip. Then his parents were called to the school. His father stayed serious in front of the principal, but later laughed a lot with Frank about it. One day when Frank came home, he saw someone else in his mother's bedroom, a man who worked with his father. His mother tried hard to show that nothing was happening, even gave him some money saying, "Take this, son, buy something for yourself." But Frank understood everything. A few days later, his parents decided to separate. The lawyer asked Frank, "Do you want to stay with your mother or your father?" Watching his family break apart in front of his eyes, Frank became very sad. He couldn't bear to see this anymore. He ran away from home to another city. He didn't have much money, just a bank account and his checkbook. He kept writing checks and giving them to hotel staff. But when the checks started bouncing, the hotels threw him out. Then one day, while sitting, he got an idea that checks could also be forged. This was an older time when there wasn't much advanced technology. Taking advantage of this, Frank slowly started making fake checks. He would write different names and cash them. And if a bank manager refused to cash them, he would confidently use his father's old tricks, like the necklace trick, which always worked. But slowly his scam began to get noticed. Now his checks weren't working in any bank. Then one day Frank saw a pilot outside a hotel. Everyone was respecting that pilot. Seeing this gave Frank an idea. Why not become a pilot himself? Not a real one, a fake one. Then everyone would respect him and his checks would easily be cashed. So he posed as a reporter at the airport and told officials he was writing an article on pilots, asking them questions. He found out where pilots got their uniforms. He then called that place, saying his uniform got damaged and he needed a new one. After a few clever tricks, Frank got a nice uniform. He was about to pay with a check, but the employee said, "I just need your pilot ID. Then you don't have to pay, we'll charge the airline directly." Frank had already made a fake ID, so he got the uniform for free. Now Frank went to a bank to cash checks, the same bank where earlier no one cared about him. Now the manager himself came forward and cashed his check. Later, he learned from a hotel that he could also cash bigger amounts, but they had to be salary checks. So Frank began making fake salary checks too. He would cut out airline logos from toy planes and paste them on the checks. Then he took one to a bank, but the manager said, "Sir, you can cash this directly at the airport." At the airport, Frank could cash checks anytime, and he loved this. A receptionist asked him if he was flying with them today. Frank said yes, and she directly took him inside the plane. Pilots could sit on flights for free. Frank wasn't a real pilot, so he was scared, but he acted confident. Then he used his father's necklace trick to impress a pretty air hostess. Frank looked older than his age, so no one suspected he wasn't really a 22, 23-year-old pilot. He was enjoying life to the fullest. He even flirted with a bank manager to learn how the banking system worked, where checks come from, how account numbers are assigned, everything. He learned banks use typewriters to encode checks. So he bought a second-hand typewriter exactly like that. Now Frank wasn't doing small frauds, his work had become very professional. Gradually, he started extracting bigger amounts, and his frauds grew larger. The FBI got news of his crimes and assigned the case to an agent named Carl. He was very serious about his job. One day, Frank met his father, whom he often wrote letters to about his pilot life. His father believed he really was a pilot and felt proud of him. Frank said, "The government took everything from you, so I bought you a car with my earnings, the same one James Bond drives in the movies." But his father said the government was still after him over tax fraud, and if he took the car, they'd seize it too. His father's store had shut down, and he was still struggling. Frank offered him money, but he refused, saying, "I can't take money from you." Frank now understood the entire banking system well. He would cash checks in different states. The FBI carefully tracked his movements and soon reached the hotel where Frank last cashed a check. While investigating, they learned Frank was still staying there. He had been there so long that he was familiar with everyone in the hotel. Carl went straight to Frank's room with his gun. Frank realized if he didn't show some trickery, he'd be caught. So he acted like a government agent and told Carl, "Calm down, I'm with the Secret Service. Did you think you're the only one looking for this man? The whole government is after him." Carl asked for ID. Frank said, "Here, keep my whole wallet, check it." Carl couldn't open it with one hand. Meanwhile, Frank pointed outside, saying, "Look, our men have already caught the con man. We got here before you." Outside, a neighbor was helping a blind man into a car. From afar, Carl thought the con men really had been caught. He started trusting Frank. Frank picked up all his fake check-making tools and told Carl, "I'll go put this evidence downstairs until the police arrive." Carl trusted him completely, even giving back the wallet. But Frank deliberately said, "No, you keep it," and ran away with all his things. When Carl finally opened the wallet, it was empty. The clever con man had escaped before his eyes. Carl felt humiliated. His boss scolded him badly.